Ladies and gentlemen, Enotria is that beautiful, sunlit Souls-like we've all been waiting for, but with that beauty comes some very confusing and not so straightforward systems. So let's go over everything you need to know from the different elements, status effects, stats, and more to make sure by the time you get the game, we have a nice, smooth playthrough. Let's go. So the first thing we need to talk about to make sure we're all on the same page are the base stats to every character. And these are referred to in this game as virtues. You have Bruiser, increasing your health and defense, Assassin, which in this game is your physical attack power, along with Luck, making it so that you get an increased chance of enemies dropping more items. We also have Elementalist, increasing your elemental power from your weapons like Viz, Fado, Gradia, and Milano. And we're going to dive much deeper into those in just a second. This also increases some mask lines, which are just spells. But moving forward, if I refer to anything like line charge speed, line damage, just know I'm talking about your spells. We also have Trickster, which increases your stamina. And then we have Battle Mage, which is really just focusing on your mask lines. Again, your spells. This is going to be increasing the speed that they charge alongside the spell power they provide. Quick side note, you can respec in this game, so don't stress if you can't decide what you really want to dive into now. You'll eventually receive the Severed Braid of a Maiden later on in the game, so you can always go back and fine-tune your build a little bit later. Now, let's tackle all the elements we have in Enotria. These are super important, and it's crucial for us to understand these to have a better experience playing throughout this game. So, you're going to come across enemies throughout the entirety of the game that are either immune to certain elements, will deal specific elemental damage to you, and then they'll all be vulnerable to specific types of elemental damage. Your job is to find out which one they're vulnerable to. And that's where this little icon comes into play. This thing is simply showing us what element will be the counter to the next. Now, the correct way to look at this icon is actually going counterclockwise. And I don't know what the hell made him do that, but this is what we're working with. So for a quick example, say you see an enemy with the Fado symbol. Well, this is triggering us to, number one, know he's going to be immune to that specific elemental damage. And number two, we can now look back at that icon and figure out what he's vulnerable to, which in this case would be the Gradia damage, or Radiant, whatever you want to call it. Now, say our enemy has the Viz icon above their head. They're going to be vulnerable to Fado damage. Now, let's go a bit more in depth on what each element exactly does. Starting with Gradia, which is the same thing as Radiant damage. When you're affected by this Radiant status effect, you're going to be healing over time. However, that effect can be popped and cause a large explosion. Viz will be applying Dizzy, and Dizzy will increase the amount of damage dealt and the stamina recovery speed of your enemy, which doesn't sound too great, but it also greatly lowers the defense of that target, so they're going to be taking a hell of a lot more damage when they're affected with this Dizzy status. The Milano status in this game is your poison. You could build up this poison on your enemy for an additional damage over time effect. Be aware this can spread to you and other enemies if you're standing by it, so typically you'd want to set that status effect and maybe have some ranged spells banked away so you can keep doing damage while that's running. The Fado element increases your elemental power and makes enemies heal if they hit you. However, if you use this Fado status effect on enemies that are already weak to it, so they would have the Viz icon, it's going to deal way more damage. And it's also going to give them the Wicked status effect. The Wicked status simply makes the enemy's elemental power more destructive, so something to keep in mind. And real quick, think about hitting that like button for me. It lets me know you're enjoying the video and it helps me out a lot. Thank you so much, everybody. Understanding these status effects could be a bit much, but honestly, if you strip all these effects away and just focus on what is vulnerable to what, like, oh, the white bubble is vulnerable to the green bubble, and the green bubble is vulnerable to the red bubble, then for the most part, you're going to be good to go and have a lot of fun. And then later on, if you want to min-max or dive a bit deeper, then you can start focusing on the actual status effects. And I just want to touch on the Adore and status power one more time to make sure we're clear. Adore is your spell damage. So when you put points into Battle Mage, you're choosing to use more of the spells more frequently due to the increase in damage and cooldown reduction to have those spells come back even quicker. And your status power is simply increasing the damage of the attack that inflicts that status effect. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the hub area. This is our round table hold and should be treated as such. Once you defeat Zanny in the first area of the game and a bit past that location is where you're going to find this hub. The main thing here is just to make sure you're returning to this regularly throughout your playthrough. You'll have your upgrade anvil here and one of the only merchants in the game available to us. As you go through the game, there's going to be brand new weapons available to try out, new items like the respec braid that we spoke about, as well as these Harmonia sap items that allow us to recover health while hitting enemies enemies. These I found to be absolutely priceless throughout my playthrough and got me out of some sticky situations, so definitely stockpile on some of these for yourself. And this brings me right into masks and loadouts. Now when I first started this game, I wasn't really feeling the whole switching loadouts thing, I'm gonna be honest. But that's before we started learning about all the status effects at the top. Now we could see why these 3 loadouts exist. You can use 2 different weapons on each loadout, so you can at least cover 2 of the status effects with 1 loadout. Another main part to this is if you look at the talent tree in this purple section here, the first few nodes will guarantee you specific element types. Now within each loadout, you can go way deeper and change everything from your spells, your masks, each perk you're working with. But at the very least, set up a loadout with a specific element type in mind. Moving on, you need to try your weapons. A lot of these weapons in the game will actually have a special weapon skill. This will cause the weapon to glow in its corresponding status color, and it will apply that status damage alongside the status effect. These weapons are extremely powerful by themselves, and incorporating them into your loadouts will be a very good move on your end. These unique weapon skills will only be activated with your heavy attack button, so just try everything out and see what works for you. Let's talk a bit about upgrades and refunds. So keep in mind, you can always refund the materials you spent on upgrading any weapon. Now mind you, I said materials. You're not getting your runes back. But this means we don't have to be shy when upgrading new weapons to try stuff out. And honestly, there's a great farm spot super early on in the game. You could just head over to the Church of Maja, and you got like 4 enemies dancing around that drop like 240 runes each. So really, the Memoria or runes aren't that hard to come by either. Now for your upgrades, you can upgrade everything. If you go to the anvil, not only can you upgrade your weapons, but you can upgrade your favorite masks, and most importantly, you can upgrade your most used spells. And this is where they actually start to pack a punch. Upgrade the ones you find yourself using most frequently, and start trying some new ones out as well. We're going to be getting plenty of these upgrade materials for these, so lean on into that. I also want to point out that specific spells will charge faster than others. I don't have the exact tier list or table to go off of, so if anyone has that information on what spells come back off cooldown faster, please leave it in the comments below for everyone. But what are your thoughts on this game so far? Because I really think we need more of these vibrant, beautiful Souls-like games in our lives. I hope this video helps you have a smooth playthrough, and I will see you in the next one. Toodles!